Steven Spielberg names 5 actors he will never work with again. In Hollywood, memory is more powerful than fame. It decides who gets the next call, who is quietly forgotten, and who never works with Spielberg again. Steven Spielberg became famous not only because of his imagination, but because of his care and attention to every part of his movies. He can see a story in his mind before the first frame is filmed. From Jaws to Schindler's List, from E.T. to Lincoln, he has shaped the story of modern cinema. But even the kindest storyteller remembers when things went wrong. Times when problems were not just about the story, but about people. Some actors brought more trouble than talent. Some broke the trust between director and cast. In Spielberg's work, art is only possible when people trust one another. Hollywood gives many second chances, but Spielberg rarely does. Over many years, he has worked with legends, helped new stars rise, and brought fading ones back. Yet behind his friendly image, he keeps a private list. 5 names he promised never to call again. Were they too proud, too difficult, or did they forget that no one is bigger than the story? What follows is not gossip, but history. 5 times Steven Spielberg decided the camera would never roll for certain actors again. Yeah, but you're all right. I left my bike. Whoa, wait, stop. Shia LaBeouf, the young star who spoke too soon. Spielberg once called Shia a natural talent. In Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, Spielberg saw him as a future leading man. But after the movie came out, Shia blamed the director and the script in public. For Spielberg, that broke Hollywood's oldest rule: loyalty in public, honesty in private. Their teamwork ended that day, and Spielberg never called him again. When Shia first came to Spielberg's attention, he was full of energy and ideas, smart, restless, and unpredictable. Spielberg produced Transformers, the movie that made Shia a star. He saw in him a rare mix of emotion and spark that made people believe his characters. Casting him as Indiana Jones's son was not just a studio choice. It was a sign of trust. Spielberg even said, "He reminds me of a young Tom Hanks." But Crystal Skull divided fans and critics. Spielberg and Harrison Ford stood by their work, speaking calmly and professionally. Shia said he was ashamed and blamed the director and writer. To Spielberg, that was not honesty but betrayal. His rule was always clear: protect the story and protect each other. On Spielberg's sets, trust is sacred. His movies run like orchestras, well-organized, disciplined, and built on respect. Ford, Hanks, and Daniel Day-Lewis understood that rhythm. Shia did not. His honesty turned into arrogance, and the result was silence. There was no fight, no second chance. Spielberg just moved on and left Shia behind. Years later, Shia admitted, "I was young and arrogant. I disrespected someone who believed in me." But it was too late. Spielberg never said anything about it again. He just never called. For a director who values loyalty more than talent, silence is the loudest answer. Their problem was not ego but principle. Spielberg believes filmmaking is based on trust, a shared leap into the unknown. When that bond breaks, no performance can fix it. Shia had talent, charm, and power, but he forgot the first rule. In Spielberg's world, the story always comes first, and no actor stands above it. Megan Fox, the comment that ended a franchise. At the height of Transformers, Megan Fox compared Michael Bay to a dictator. Her words spread quickly, and Spielberg, who produced the movies, made the call himself: "Fire her." Michael Bay later said Spielberg's decision was not about anger, but discipline. In Hollywood, where reputation is everything, one careless comment cost Fox the biggest role of her career, and Spielberg's trust forever. Megan Fox became famous overnight. Before Transformers, she was almost unknown. After it, she was a global star. Spielberg's DreamWorks helped make Transformers a worldwide hit. A giant show of machines, battles, and explosions. On screen, Fox was more than a co-star. She was the human heart in the middle of all the chaos. Off-screen, she struggled with the sudden fame and pressure. During an interview for the sequel, Fox said Bay acted like Hitler when directing. The comment caused a storm. For Spielberg, who made Schindler's List to honor Holocaust survivors, it was not just a bad joke. It was something deeply offensive. He said, "Fire her right now." Fox was gone before filming started on Transformers: Dark of the Moon. Later she said her words were misunderstood, that people took them out of context, but it did not matter. The damage was done. Spielberg never said anything publicly. His silence said everything. For a man who values empathy, respect, and kindness, Fox's comment went against everything he stood for. Years later, she said, "I was young and spoke without thinking." But in Hollywood, once something is said, it cannot be unsaid. Spielberg never worked with her again. Her talent was real, her beauty clear, her charm natural. But in Spielberg's world, respect is not optional. It is the price of admission. One comment ended her part in a billion-dollar story. Not because of ego, but because words have power, and once spoken, they cannot be taken back. "Yesterday, I quit acting. Today I'm thinking maybe I'll keep going. I fight with this. I'm addicted." Christian Bale, the perfectionist who would not bend. Spielberg discovered Bale as a boy in Empire of the Sun. Even as a child, Bale had amazing focus. But that same intensity became a wall later. When talk of reuniting came up, both quietly refused. Bale's extreme method and Spielberg's careful precision were different languages. They respected each other's craft but would not surrender control again. When Empire of the Sun premiered in 1987, it was unlike anything Spielberg had done. A story of innocence lost in war, carried by a boy who seemed to have already seen too much. Spielberg called him the most disciplined young actor he had ever met. Bale could cry on command, memorize lines quickly, and stay in character between takes. Even the crew whispered about his focus, knowing they were watching something special. Spielberg was impressed but cautious. He admired the fire inside the young actor but knew that fire would be hard to direct later. Spielberg loved control. Bale was a force of will. Their relationship worked because one was learning and the other teaching. Years later, both were masters, and masters rarely share the same stage. As Bale grew famous for his transformations in movies like The Machinist and The Dark Knight, his process became legendary. Spielberg's directing stayed about teamwork and precision. When talk of a reunion appeared, both hesitated. They admired each other too much to risk conflict. Bale said, "He gave me my start. That's enough." It was not anger, just closure. Their silence was respect. They knew some collaborations are perfect only once. For Spielberg, Bale showed the thin line between discipline and obsession. For Bale, Spielberg showed that genius does not need to come from pain. They made art from opposites, control and chaos, warmth and fire, and walked away without bitterness. Sometimes two artists meet to create one unforgettable moment. Repeating it would only weaken its truth. Empire of the Sun was that moment, and they both knew it. Terry Garr, the actress who questioned the frame. Her role in Close Encounters of the Third Kind was small, but her frustration was big. She wanted her character to have more depth. Spielberg wanted focus. The power of the film came from wonder, not family realism. Garr believed her character deserved more. Her honesty made headlines, and Spielberg, young and protective of his work, took it personally. They never worked together again. In 1977, Spielberg was changing cinema with awe. Close Encounters was a spiritual journey disguised as science fiction, a story about humans reaching for the unknown. Garr's character, Ronnie, was the grounded wife to Richard Dreyfuss's dreamer, Roy. He was allowed madness and vision. She was confined to fear and tears. It was not her story, it was his. Spielberg saw her role as the emotional anchor, the symbol of ordinary life slipping away. But for Garr, it felt like a reduction. She wanted to show the truth of a woman watching her family fall apart, not just react to it. On set, she asked questions politely but often, wanting more context. Spielberg, still in his early 30s, saw it as a challenge. The more he tightened control, the more she pushed. The movie's success made him a superstar, but Garr was left feeling limited. Later, she said, "It's hard to play someone who's only allowed to cry." Her words became a mirror for how Hollywood treated women. Spielberg would later learn from that. In The Color Purple, Saving Private Ryan, and West Side Story, his female characters gained stronger voices. Garr's experience quietly taught him awareness. Their disagreement was not loud but meaningful. She wanted to be seen. He wanted control. In that tension lay a lesson about power, gender, and trust. Sometimes actors who challenge a director don't break his vision. They expand it. Terry Garr did exactly that. Julia Roberts, the star who tested Neverland. On Hook, Spielberg faced one of his hardest productions. Julia Roberts, who played Tinker Bell, felt isolated and overwhelmed by the chaos of the film. Rumors called her Tinker Hell. Spielberg later said she was lonely, not difficult, but the distance was clear. Two big names under pressure, one lost connection, and a partnership that never returned. By the early 1990s, Julia Roberts was at the height of fame. Spielberg, already a legend, was returning to fantasy after years of drama. Hook was meant to be a grand reimagining of Peter Pan. But the production, full of rewrites and giant sets,